Good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Dinardo. I came from Indonesia. I study in UW, studying Bachelor of Business, major in Supply Chain Management. Now, today's passage will be from Exodus 3, verse 1 until 10. Moses and the burning bush. One day Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses started in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. "This is amazing," Moses said to himself. "Why didn't that bush burning up? I must go see it." When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, "Moses, Moses." "Here I am," Moses replied. "Do not come any closer," the Lord warned. "Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord told him, "I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries and distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It is a land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must let my people Israel out of Egypt." So that's the Bible. Thank you very much.
Well done. That was a really tough Bible reading, and you did that really well. Thank you. Well, this is a sermon one-off for our congregation, but for the morning congregations, it's a sermon series, okay? So forgive Jason for calling it a series when we're just doing one of them, but maybe if we're really good, he might let us do more on Moses in the weeks ahead. So you can see how the first one goes and then tell Jason what you want to do. But it's my privilege to introduce Moses tonight. So we'll spend a fair bit of time just introducing Moses and understanding who Moses is and a little bit more about his family. And then we'll look at this moment with the burning bush that Pastor M.A. was talking about earlier, and his analysis of the fire, and we'll see what we can glean from that passage. So I want to introduce Moses to you, and one of the important things about Moses is where he lived, right? And actually, he lived in a land called Egypt. So before we dive into Egypt, couple of quick questions. Do you know anything about Egypt? Tell me about Egypt. What words come into your mind for Egypt? Pharaoh, pyramids, sand, sphinx, someone said. That's a complicated word. It's good for Scrabble, though. Camels, yeah. Okay, you're good. All right, you're in the zone. Now, for me, some important years in my life were the 1980s, and so I thought, because I'm the senior minister, I would introduce the theme music for our time together. And so I'm going to waste your life for a few seconds, and we're going to listen to the theme music for the Moses series. Thank you, Gerard. Oh, I think Janice might have a few clues. Your dancing is allowed. Oh, maybe. Actually, Gerard's having trouble with the tech. Okay, well, we actually got to rock along. All right, dancing is allowed. Come on, can you do it? Look at that, I've got some dancing up the back. there's 50 seconds of your life. 50 seconds of your life you'll never get back again. And the Bible does talk about a little bit about Moses' family, actually, and it makes reference to these characters who I'm going to introduce you to in a minute. These people, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and I thought we might pop up on the screen a family tree. So there it is. And so you can see this is a family tree. Abraham is like the father of this family, the first one that God talked to. And then there's Isaac and Jacob, so his son and grandson. And we go down and there's this wide one, which starts with Judah and Levi, and actually there are 10 other brothers, and these 12 people in this generation, they actually started off the 12 tribes of Israel, right? So that's a really important little moment. And then you go down a couple of generations and we come to the name Moses, right? So that at least gives you an idea of what the connection is and how Moses fits into the family tree from the first part of the Old Testament. Now, I've actually met these guys, and I invited them to come up and share with you tonight. So if my three actors could please come forward, and we'll get into it. Moses is very old, and this morning the wig was actually an improvement on the guy's hair, so I didn't actually give it to him, but tonight I think you need to wear this wig. This is Abraham. Meet Abraham. There we go. Looking good. All right. Get into it, Abraham. Come and stand in front of the microphone.
I'm Abraham. I'm very old. So is my wife. We couldn't have children, and menopause and all that. But then, as 90 years old, God asked us to trust Him. He gave us a miracle child. This miracle child started a family who would be God's special family. Through this family, God would bless the whole world.
This is Isaac. I'm just going to slip you this knife. There you go.
Hey there, I am Isaac, and I'm special. I'm the miracle child. Is that it? No, Kinyochinika. Sorry. But then God tested us. He wanted to know if we were 100% committed to Him and His promises. So He asked my dad to take me up a mountain with this knife. He asked my dad to offer me back to God and slaughter me like a lamb sacrifice. This was a huge moment, but we decided to trust God and do what He said. At the last minute, God said, wait, and then God provided an actual sheep to be sacrificed in my place.
Well done. Thank you. And this guy's a tricky fella, so I got him like a jester's hat. Can you see all right?
Yeah, thanks. Jester's hat. So do you like Jester's hat? I'm a trickster. And I got my older brother's good. He's so stupid. He didn't care about being God's special family. So I scammed my dad, and God went along with the plan. Maybe it was faith that I wanted God's blessing so much. I ended up with God's blessing. I got to be the father of God's special family. I ended up with multiple wives. And I ended up with 12 sons. Their 12 families became the 12 tribes of Israel. Then came an extreme famine. My favorite kid, Joseph, got to know the Pharaoh down in Egypt. So we moved the whole family down there and we ate his food. One of my other kids, Levi, was like our family priest. And Levi is the great-grandfather of Moses.
We are in heaven now, but it's great to see how God kept His promise to us. We didn't think we would ever have a family, but now we have about as many family members as there are in the stars in the sky.
My name Isaac means to laugh. At first, my mom laughed sarcastically at God because she didn't really believe she could ever get pregnant at 90 years old. But now I laugh with joy every time another person joins the family of God.
Well, I gave up trying to trick everyone. In the end, the joke was on me. Because God always came through for us. He never let us down. Not in my generation. And not 4 generations after, when my great-great-grandson Moses trusted God with our big family. Thank you.
Well done, champions. Thank you. And the knife. Yep, thank you. So hi there. I'm Prince Moses. Well, I could have been Prince Moses, but I made a different decision in my life. I'm not as entertaining as those other guys, but I want to tell you a little bit about how my life got so complicated and what's happening in my life. If I was born in your time, I'd probably be this kind of middle-aged biker kind of dude or something, I think. And actually, in my family, we've got this farming background. We seem like Father Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, they spent a lot of time chasing around with flocks of sheep and goats. And you've heard the story how they all moved to Egypt during a time of hunger and how they found food there. And at the beginning, our family flourished. We had really fertile farmlands, and actually a few generations later, there's more than 1 million of us. And that's an incredible blessing from God. But then things started to go not so well, let me say. Things really spiraled, and these days, my people, well, we are slaves. We are beaten. We carry stone, we chop timber, and we work on other people's farms. And we are beaten. We are despised. They kill us, and there are no repercussions. So I told you that my life was complicated. Let me tell you how I was born. Well, I was born the normal way, actually. I'm not going to go into those details. But when I was a baby, there was a rule that all the baby boys be killed. And that came from the top. It was a horrible way to come into the world. I had to be hidden away, and it's nearly impossible to hide a crying baby. Any mothers out there? Yes, you understand. So it wasn't long until I was too big and too noisy. And so my mum did something a little bit out of faith and a little bit out of desperation. She put me in a little basket, and she made it float, and she placed me in the river and floated me off with the prayer that someone would find me and care for me. Do any of you know how that story worked out for us? It turns out that a princess, like, this is incredible, a daughter of the Pharaoh, right? He had quite a few sons and daughters, but still, she found me and she took me in and she oversaw my life. And here's another miracle. God even organised it so that my birth mum could care for me when I was a little tacker. How good is that? Isn't God amazing? Well, so I'm educated. I do the Egyptian thing. I speak like an Egyptian. I walk like an Egyptian. But then I had to make a really tough decision. Was I going to be a prince of the mighty kingdom of Egypt? Or, in fact, did I belong to another nation? In my heart, I made a decision that I was always going to follow the way of my fathers, of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Their God was going to be my God. And so I decided to liberate my people. I decided to stand up, to make a difference. And so I did. One day, they were beating one of my kind, and I intervened. I was brave. Only I actually killed the guy who was beating my mate, and then my mate started talking about it, and soon everyone knew that I had killed an Egyptian, and so I got out of there. I ran. I had to hide. I ran for my life. I escaped from Egypt. I found this little place called Midian where I might be safe. I guess God was good to me even then. That could have been the end of my story, but it was certainly the end of my attempt to save my people. Then a funny thing happened. This is where the romance starts. Because there I was at a village well, and these girls came down to get water, and these nasty shepherds started beating them up and being unkind and not letting them near the water. And so I stood up for those girls. I made sure they got water, and I sent them off safely. Well, the dad turns out to be descended from Abraham. Isn't God amazing, right? So I had family away from family, and he heard about this and invited me over for dinner, and it wasn't long before I married one of those young girls. Mrs. Z, we call her. Zipporah. What a name. Oh, I love that girl. So there I am, living a simple life. Back to our roots. I'm a shepherd. I work for the guy who's a priest in this little area, and I look after his livestock. Now, I'm going to stop being Moses, and I'm going to go back to being Pastor Pete, right? Because, I can only keep that going so long. But it helps us to understand what we just heard from the Bible, doesn't it? With that bit of backstory, now we understand why it's so important that Moses is tending these animals for his father-in-law, Jethro, right? Who's actually a priest in the land of Midian. And then one day Moses has this day, he goes a bit further from home. He goes to a mountain, a famous mountain in the life of his family and faith, a mountain called Sinai. And there, an angel appears to him, but not the normal way, right? So he comes across this thing. Sometimes you look, like I looked at Zeke's foot and I thought, that's not normal, right? That shouldn't go like that. Well, Moses looked at this bush and he said, hang on, fires don't work like that. Something's different here. And it was a big fire, and it should have just burnt the tree and moved on, but the tree wasn't being burnt. And so Moses went closer, and then he heard a voice, Moses, come here. So Moses went closer, and then suddenly Moses wasn't allowed to go any closer. That's close enough, Moses. He heard. What's going on? Well, he didn't have to guess, because God spoke to Moses out of that bush. And now I'm going to ask you to just turn to the person next to you. Again, another little chat. And I want you to have a little chat. What is the most important thing that God could say to Moses? Okay? It can be a fun answer, it can be a serious answer. But what do you think God is going to say to Moses right now? 30 seconds. Off you go. Okay, tick, 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 5 seconds. Okay, have we got any answers? What's the most important thing that God could possibly say in this moment? Yes. Well, that is literally, thank you, we've got the literal answer there. Well done. Someone had to say it. She said, take off your shoes. Yeah, yeah. He said that. Okay, yeah, okay. That's a creative answer. What are you doing hiding with the sheep? Okay, I've got plans. Good. Any other answers? Cook your own sausages. Yeah. Okay. It would be, yeah, it would be a lamb chop, I guess, or something. The first thing you'd want God to say is, don't be afraid. I'm resonating the most with that answer so far. Yeah, it would be a frightening moment, wouldn't it, to realise you'd entered into God's presence? Yeah. Any other answers there? I think you were laughing, so you said something funny down the front here. All right, this is where you can get fire forever. Okay, that you could start a whole story out of that. It's like the Olympic flame that never goes out. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, why don't we see what actually happens then? So yes, there's take off your sandals. Thank you for the great answer over there. Why? Because you're standing on holy ground. And then the first thing that God says, once Moses realizes that he's standing on holy ground, he's in God's presence, God actually speaks about that bit. I am the God of your father or fathers, the God of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob. And that message, Moses finds that message overwhelming, right? He's overwhelmed. He covers his face. He's afraid to even look at God. Like, I don't like looking at the sun because I don't want my eyes to be damaged, but he's got that fear, like, I've come face to face with something that's terrifying, potentially something that would overwhelm me. You see, Moses understands what it really means to be holy. He understands the concept that God is holy, God is right, God is pure. And Moses has had a life so different to that, right? He's just killed a guy. He's grown up in an Egyptian household. He's lived an ordinary life like you and I. His life's full of, sins and mistakes. And here he is entering into the presence of a holy God. And it turns out that the Lord is awesome and that the Lord's presence is so intense that even the ground and the local area is affected, and Moses has to respond in one particular way. And we could say a whole lot more about fire and we can say a whole lot more about holy, but there's a simple thing that Moses has to do. He has to take his shoes off. So I'm sorry I laughed at your answer. And this business of I won't ask you all to take your shoes off now, but if we did do that to try and be like Moses, what we would be expressing is actually reverence, humility. We would be saying, I come before you, God, a bit lower. I come bowed down. You are great and I am small. And then God declares, I am the God of your fathers. And imagine actually meeting God like that. I mean, I don't think I'd get past the first word where God says, I. Because then I'll be realizing, yes, this moment is not about me and it's not about Moses. This is a God moment. Or I am. And when God says, I am, that resonates, that echoes, and we're going to hear more about that next week. But God is present, God is active, God is holy, God is mighty. And Moses has already tried to save his people his own way, and how did that work out? But now there's going to be an intervention. God is going to act, and it's going to be God's power and God's love on display. And just look where God takes this conversation. Then the Lord told him, I have certainly seen the oppression. Just listen to the doing words, to the emotional words. I've certainly seen the oppression. I've heard their cries of distress. I'm aware of their suffering. And so I have come down to rescue and lead to a place flowing with milk and honey and lots of people whose name ends with ites. Look, the cry, the prayers of the people of Israel have reached me. And now I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abused them. Now go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh. And now Pharaoh's not looking that big, Pharaoh's looking that big, right? And Moses is still feeling this big. But God is this big. Praise the Lord indeed. And so what's the message for us? How do we feel about that and think about that? There's going to be lots more in the weeks ahead for the people who get to hear the Moses series. Sorry, Jason. But I think the life of Moses is extraordinary. I think it's interesting, it's dazzling, if you're teaching Moses to kids, it's wonderful, right? Has anyone taught Sunday school in the room here? Have you ever taught about Jesus to kids or Moses to kids? You've got so much stuff that's going to happen. We've got frogs and we've got bugs and waves and swords, and we've got this big angry bully and chariots and horses and little fragile families, and we've got lambs and we've got blood and we've got bread floating down out of the sky. I mean, this is a ripper of a story. And this stuff is awesome. But actually, the thing that makes this story epic is God from start to finish. We've got a God who loves, a God who listens, a God who speaks and sends and saves. And Moses, he's a champion, but he's a champion because he trusts this big God. He might start out like a rebel without a cause, like an educated refugee. He might start it out like a shepherd married to the priest's daughter, an unusual character. But he's chosen by God. And he's special because he obeys God. And he gets to be part of God's chosen family, as do we. We get to hear the God who speaks. We get to humble ourselves before him. We get to be included in his people. We get to be part of his saving purposes. Yes, God saved Moses as a little baby, and God's going to go on to save his people out of this big land of Egypt with its pyramids. And 3,000 years later, God saved you, and he saved me. And he sent us, a little bit like he sent Moses, with a message that saves. He sent us to declare to a world that is allied to the power, to the rulers, to the money. And he's sent us to declare his salvation. And this amazing story includes us. We walk in the footsteps of Moses, and we stand before a holy God, and we get to be witnesses to his power, and we get to see his mercy. I'm excited about that. I love the fact that our great God cares and listens and acts. And I think as we share the good news with people around us, I think they want to hear about a God who hears their cries of distress, about a God who stands up to abuse, about a God who reaches out and saves. So the Lord bless you. Have a great week. And as you walk with the Lord this week, just remember how big he is and how he's holy and how he's good.